Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you. In Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August the 15th, 2019. Rondo Deportes, Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, I found myself watching an MLS soccer game last night that they were playing down in Atlanta. I guess I'm being converted to the European style of football.
I guess you know, sometimes it's good to have a change up. That's why people have more than one pair of shoes in their closet, Big C. There's different kinds of football. There's also different kinds of relationships. There's relationships in California, they call them open relationships. I got some friends in Utah, they call them open. But in Washington, D.C., they call them one-way relationships. You see, it's either Otis Way or the highway. A lot of good things going on in sports. Football is ready, down in the desert. Will John Gruden, the quarterback maven, be able to find a defense to stop Kyler Murray? There's a lot of good things happening in sports. Also, baseball still swinging the bat. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, now that you found a new kind of football, the rugby style, do you think it takes a real man? You know how I think one time John Madden said, it takes a real man to go over the middle. Who's more macho, rugby guys without helmets or the guys with helmets, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got to realize how tough rugby is, Charlton. This is the same brand of football that they play in America without any padding or any helmet. So you think about the toughness and fortitude of those guys that play the game. And the game is perpetual motion, not where you're getting 40 seconds between plays like you are in the U.S. That game is a continuation. That ball is down, it's being moved, picked up, and run and passed again, Charlton. So the toughness has to go to the rugby players, just like I think hockey is the toughest physical sports in the United States.
Now, I know you say that hockey is a tougher sport than football, and maybe because a lot of guys, if you can be 6'5", 6'6", even 6 feet, 200 pounds, 250 pounds, and skate around on ice without falling down, Big C. There's a lot of guys in football that are not on skates and they can't stand up. So do you mean that if they had that real man in competition that you think that hockey players are more talented than football players, Big C?
Hands down, Charlton. Hockey players are more talented and they're tougher than players in the NFL. If you think about the NFL is limited to a 16-game schedule.
Yeah.
They take an entire week off after having physical contact. You look at hockey. Hockey's season is the same length as the NBA season, 82 games.
Yeah.
So you think about those road streaks, Charlton, where they're on the road for a week at a time, and they're playing 4 to 5 games in that stretch. You got 82 games that you play.
Yep.
They're playing 5 times as many games as the NFL is playing, Charlton. So if you think those guys are not tougher than NFL players, spend 1 week trying to play hockey.
Well, you know, it's interesting because in the world of sports, there used to be a program called Joes versus Pros. And I know that when people talk about what's tougher, and I really love what you did on the fight segment, going back to guys like Jack Johnson and Dempsey and guys, of course, like Ali and Frazier. And I keep hearing in my mind, down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Just because boxing and MMA is on the circuit again, and it's like one hand washes the other. If you were to talk about different sports and the tough guy sports, I know if you look at boxing and MMA, what would you consider the toughest? There are guys who can do the boxing game that wouldn't make it in MMA. And as we saw Conor McGregor and Floyd Money Mayweather, there are MMA guys that could not make it in boxing. But which one would you call the toughest fighter, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you're going to look at boxing far as the length of a match. I mean, boxing is 12 rounds. MMA max is 5 rounds.
Yeah.
MMA fighters couldn't go 7 rounds in a fight, Charlton. So if we're talking about endurance, boxers have more endurance. If a boxer is forced to go into an MMA fight, and we've seen it with Mayweather and McGregor.
Yeah.
It depends on the rules that you're utilizing. But MMA is not really boxing. I mean, it's just a gladiator sport. I mean, it's about exerting physical dominance on another individual. That's what it's all about. People can say it's tactical. They can talk about the different forms of martial arts that are used and the wrestling techniques that are used in the game.
Yeah.
These are superior athletes. But as far as just a pure sport, I mean, America is a gluttony for when you think about blood and gore.
Yeah.
That's what the MMA is about. You know, when you see the blood gushing in the MMA, it brings out more excitement. I mean, it's more like the video games that are being played in America and around the world, and that's part of what makes MMA so popular.
Yeah.
Is that people are looking for the ultimate violence. That's what they're looking for, and that's what the MMA brings out, whether it's the men or the women fighting. It's about the ultimate violence. I mean, choking someone out. We talk about CTE issues in all sports all the time in America. MMA is leading the ledger right now as far as CTE and athletes. They are not tested for that, but you can't tell me that these MMA fighters are not suffering concussions and CTE issues when they're being elbowed, they're being kicked, and they're being punched in the head.
Well, you think about Dana White, and there's a great announcer by the name of Joe Rogan, former MMA guy. And if you think about promotion and how gumbo, you down south, so a lot of people eat gumbo. In fact, my grandmother used to make a really good gumbo. Even though I was a little boy last time I tasted her gumbo, I still remember how good it tasted because it had so many different flavors in it. And I just wondered if we could go back in time and bring guys like Jack Johnson, who had 73 wins, 13 losses. Guys like Rocky Marciano was 49-0. Joe Louis, my dad, I think that was my dad's favorite fighter, 66-3. Sugar Ray Robinson, 173-19. Imagine the kind of money that they could have made today if they were put in the same role that Floyd Money Mayweather was in because of guys like Dana White in promotion, cross-promotion. I want to get your thoughts. Do you think that those fighters from back in the day could have gotten into the ring with some of the top mixed martial artists of this day and held their own big C? Your thoughts?
Well, we're talking about two different sports, not even eras. We're just talking about two different sports when you look at that. You would have to put them in the ring with the boxers of the day. Could the boxers of the day fight along with those boxers of that bygone era, Charlton? Those fighters fought 15-round fights. Boxing now has been limited to 12-round fights. Fighters get into no man's land when they get to the 10th round. These guys were accustomed to going 14, 15 rounds and fight. When we look at MMA, that did not even exist at that time. It would be like equating saying, okay, what would be the value of Wilt Chamberlain in today's modern NBA when we looked at the free agency market? What would Wilt Chamberlain's value be in his prime after coming off a season where he averaged 54 points a game and 26 rebounds?
Wow.
Could anybody afford Wilt Chamberlain?
No.
Well, in football, when we just looked at free agency, what would the value of a Barry Sanders been, or even O.J. Simpson, or even Adrian Peterson, Eric Dickerson, after they had just rushed for 2,000 yards in a season? What would the value of those guys be? So when we're talking about taking bygone boxers where MMA did not even exist during that era, no one even knew what it was. When MMA broke out, Charlton, that was somewhere, in the mid-'90s when it came out and people started paying attention to it. And people started looking at it as backroom events, and it catapulted into what it is. But Americans love violence. This is the reason why we don't have gun restrictions in America, because Americans love violence. We just had a shootout in Philadelphia where 6 officers were shot, unfortunately, because a man who should not have had a gun had guns, and he had a warrant out on him, and he shot 6 officers because America looked at violence. And you think about all the bystanders that were standing around.
I know.
Think about if one of them had been hit with a stray bullet, because Americans love gore. They're looking to see who's the next person to get injured. That's what MMA brings. It brings out the medieval thoughts in people's minds when they go to MMA events.
And I was thinking about, you always talk about your grandfather and how your dad would watch sports with you. And I think about how sports really does bring people together. We talked about Anthony Scaramucci just the other day, former White House press secretary under POTUS, and he was making baseball metaphors and about Donald Trump losing his fastball, and then I was watching some fight over the last couple of days, and I noticed in the arena down in Las Vegas, I think it was MGM or T-Mobile, one of them, they had the former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was there. Of course, Cody Garbrandt was there. You know, Uriah Faber, a lot of the boxers, Anthony Cormier, he was there. Mike Tyson was there. You see guys, I remember seeing one where Michael Irvin was at a fight when there was Garbrandt having a fight against someone also. And it's a sport that brings everybody together. So I wonder if, and maybe you didn't have this conversation, maybe you did. Did your dad or your grandfather ever talk about mixing different sports the way we do? Is football tougher than hockey? Is MMA tougher than boxing? Did you ever have those conversations with your father and grandfather and get their thoughts, Big C?
Well, you got to understand, at that time and where we grew up, hockey was not even a thing. Hockey was an East Coast sport, Charlton, East and Northeast. That's where hockey resonated at. It wasn't in the middle of the United States. It wasn't in the western part of the United States.
Yeah.
Basketball was not even a sport that people talked about at that time in my youth, Charlton. No one even thought about the basketball. NBA was a dead entity.
Yeah.
There were three sports that existed. There was professional boxing, there was Major League Baseball, and NFL was a third entity in America during that time. And it was an afterthought, really. You know, they played a couple of games on Sunday. You know, people would look at it and, you know, oh so well. It was no big deal. But when I was growing up as a kid, boxing was the number one exciting sport in America. When a major fight came on, a championship fight, Charlton, it halted what everyone did. That night, everybody paid attention to it. You didn't have television. It normally was on radio.
Yeah.
And when it got to the point of closed circuit television in the late 60s and early 90s, Muhammad Ali invented that.
Yeah.
Where there was closed circuit television where you could go to a theater, a movie theater, and watch it on a closed circuit broadcast.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, Las Vegas got a hold of boxing, and it became a mega situation. Boxing in the 70s and 80s is what MMA is today.
Yeah.
That's what it was at that time. It captivated America. It was must-see television because you had champions that had names that people recognized. When you think about the MMA champions of today, who knows who they are?
Right.
They're like the heavyweight champion of the world. It's like, who is it?
Yeah.
You know, because they fight so frequently and the belt changes hands so often, you have to be a resident of the sport. You have to sit there and watch every event. They're talking about MMA, 231, 241 now?
241 now, yeah.
And this is, we're talking about in a decade that they've had that many championship bouts. 241 of them in a decade.
Yeah.
It's something that happens all the time. I don't know if it's special. Boxing was special. You have a millennial crowd now that follows the MMA.
Yeah.
You're not going to go out and find the 50, 60, and 70-year-old at an MMA event that you'll find at a top-flight boxing event.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how sports, either from grandparents, I remember my grandfather on both sides, and then also my dad, and even my mother talks about boxing, and she would watch Ali just like the men would. And then my dad, of course, with Joe Louis, talking about guys like Sugar Ray Robinson. It's amazing how we bring those things together. And so I always just have a lot of respect for the fighters in the fight world. I want to just touch a little bit on the MMA fight that's coming up this weekend. It's actually going to be in Anaheim as opposed to Las Vegas. And when we think about the fighter that I'm more interested in is Nate Diaz. I remember him out of Northern California, out of Stockton. I actually met Nate Diaz at an MMA fight. I cover a lot of MMA fights in California and met him, and he's not very talkative. And I saw an interview that ESPN just did on him just because he's fighting this weekend, and they were saying that he's a white shark. And he said, well, what's a white shark? And he said, the reporter said something that doesn't exist. And he asked him, and I want to get your thoughts. He said, why don't you do a lot of interviews? And Nate Diaz said, I'll do my fighting in the ring. But what's there to talk about? You're either going to win or not. As an athlete, I know that you probably agree with him, but you were more talkative when you played the game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, some athletes need to self-promote themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what gets them in Madison Avenue is how much you can talk.
Yeah.
many people are looking for athletes to be spokespersons. We talked about Shaquille O'Neal.
Yep.
Look how big Shaquille O'Neal has become as a spokesperson in America.
Yeah.
Because if Shaq's on something, people think it's a viable entity because of the size of this man and how personable that he is.
Right.
This is what's propelled a lot of athletes' careers. We talked about Michael Jordan. You know, he's become a marketing guru. He laid a blueprint for athletes to go out there and make multi-millions of dollars, Charlton, off their likeness.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do as an athlete. Certain athletes just want to go to work. Mike Tyson didn't talk a lot when he was the world champion.
Right.
Mike Tyson went to work. He walked in the ring and he bob his head to the side and said, wait, somebody hit the damn bell so I can hit the guy on the other side of the ring.
Yeah.
That's what it was all about. When you think about an athletic event, you see NBA games. At the start of NBA games, everybody goes around and shakes everybody's hand, gives a bro hug, and all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
But when the ball is tossed in the air, it's a battle. It gets physical. The NFL, what do? They have a coin toss at the beginning of the game. Everybody, the captains go out there and shake hands.
Yeah.
And then after that, you try to beat the hell out of somebody for 60 minutes.
Just like hockey.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
In a boxing match, you touch gloves. In an MMA match, you touch gloves.
Yeah.
Then you want to demolish your opponent. I understand Diaz. He is focused. He's been out of the game for a while.
3 years.
He is trying to concentrate. His chances of winning are probably at about 30% because of the length of time that he's been out of the game.
Yep.
So he has to be focused on the fight, not worrying about the interview.
Well, you think about his last 3 fights, going back to Michael Johnson, he won that fight, and then he beat Conor McGregor in 2016, also lost to Conor McGregor in a very close decision that I actually thought that Nate Diaz won. But Conor McGregor is white. Nate Diaz he's a Hispanic guy. In the promote business, they need the white hero, like the great white hype. They still need that for some reason. Been many movies about that. So it's been 1,092 days since he's fought, and that's his longest career layoff. And maybe he'll get focused, maybe he'll get taken out, but I do know he's a guy that, and I'm just being honest, everybody has their own opinion, but I remember, Big C, there was a time, if you recall, we used to do our show from a sports bar. You would call into a sports bar in Northern California, and I met many MMA fighters over the years, and being around the octagon over the last probably 5 to 6 years, when guys can't talk, they really can't talk. And I know there's yet to be a study on CTE issues in the MMA world. We see the guys with the slurred speech in boxing, and people say, oh, he just punched drunk. But I know if they were to put the same type of intensity and focus on an MMA guy's brain as they do on football players that are arguing about having to wear a better helmet that's even safer, I think it would put a big monkey wrench in this fight business. Do you agree with that or no, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I've had many conversations with former boxers, former world champions, Mark Breland, Evander Holyfield. They've shown the side effects of being hit too many times in the head, Charlton. They have CTE.
Yeah.
They have brain damage, Charlton. This is what happens to boxers. Boxers don't take the punishment of a MMA fighter, Charlton.
No.
CTE is an issue, but it's not an issue for promoters and it's not an issue for sponsors. It's an afterthought of that athlete once he leaves the arena. When you sit down and you talk with former professional fighters who have had 50 fights in their career, 40 fights in their career, Charlton, they've all suffered some memory loss.
Yep.
The stability of their body is no longer 100%. They walk in a staggering motion looking like they're drunk, and that's the reason why they say they're punch drunk.
Punch drunk, yeah.
These gentlemen, their hands, they tremor. These are the side effects of brain trauma, and that's what happens when you're hit in the head over and over. And like I said, MMA fighters versus boxers, you're allowed to be elbowed.
Yep.
You're allowed to be hit when you're on the ground. You're allowed to be kicked in the head. So nobody is concerned about the overall physical well-being after those careers are over of those fighters. There's never been any study for it. And you think about Dana White, who's become a multi-billionaire owning the MMA.
Yep.
He has not set up a medical fund for these fighters after their careers are over. The NFL is struggling and fighting with the Players Association. They have set aside a fund to help players after their careers are over and have suffered from CTE. Even college football has just made a settlement. A federal judge put a settlement in to help study brain trauma on former college athletes, Charlton.
Right.
But the MMA and Dana White has no consideration for those athletes, men and women, that are in the ring that are taking this ultimate punishment. If you look at an MMA career, Charlton, you don't have fighters with 50, 60 fights on their resume.
No.
Because you cannot take the physical punishment in that game. But I look at Dana White. What are you going to do for fighters after their career over?
Nothing. He's gonna hang out with Don King. You know, I know that growing up, I was exposed to a lot of different kind of people, from pastors to pimps and politicians and athletes. And every pimp had one thing in common. They used the girls up until they didn't need them anymore. And I see a lot of us happen in MMA, and I mean this. You know, Nate Diaz, I don't know him personally. I just met him and wanted to do an interview with him, but he was so reticent to talk. It's not as if he's standoffish. I really do think there's something going on. Now, today, Nate Diaz skipped Media Day, and only Big C Sports will talk about this because most people don't care if someone dies in the ring. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but we know it's happened in sports. But he skipped Media Day ahead of his UFC 241 fight that's going to take place against Anthony Pettis on Saturday. It's going to be on ESPN pay-per-view. But he skipped Media Day. And I'm not saying he skipped Media Day because he was rude. I think because Las Vegas has prop betting. The more you show that a guy can't function before the fight, money's going to swing different ways, Big C. It's just like people that want to go to court. Sometimes people file a lawsuit. They don't show up because they're already damaged. Their best bet is that somebody else doesn't show up. And I'm just saying, if maybe I'm cynical, but I know the fight business is big. This fight is also not in Las Vegas. I'm just saying. And when one of the main fighters who hasn't fought in 3 years, you would think you'd be eager for something like that. To not show up, to me, is something going on more than just, hey, I'm going to be standoffish. Does that make any sense, or is that too cynical, your thoughts?
Well, what is Media Day in an MMA fight? It's grandstanding.
Yeah.
It's going to sit there and, let's do a stare down. Let's do a weigh-in. What are you going to say negative about your opponent? It's not about sitting up there boasting your opponent up.
Right.
You're not going to speak positive about your opponent. I mean, I look at the incident that occurred with Mayweather and McGregor in their fight. The profanity-laden tirades that McGregor was constantly spewing. So I'm going to figure that status quo for MMA fights. How you going to destroy somebody, how you going to destroy their family, and how you going to drop the F-bombs on them and all these other things. That's the build-up for a fight. So we're talking about a barbaric scene that they're trying to create to hype the fight. The MMA speaks for itself. You say it's MMA 241.
Yeah.
This is in a decade. You've had 241 championship fights in an MMA, scenario.
Yeah.
So you're having so many fights that, I mean, at times you become desensitized to the media day that they're going to have, and you just want to get to the main event fight. Just get it over with. Everybody knows what the ultimate outcome of an MMA fight is going to be.
Yeah.
You're going to have a guy down. You're going to have a guy bleeding. He's either going to get knocked out or choked out. But somebody's going to tap out is what's going to happen in the fight.
Yeah.
That's an MMA scenario. I mean, there's no mystery to the event.
Well, it's always something, I guess they've been fighting since the Gladiator, the days of the Coliseum. That's always there. Also, if you look at the main fight, and I really think that they say it's the main fight for some reason, but Cormier already knocked out Stipe Miocic, and he's going to probably do it again. But again, it's the same thing. I just think about the fighters, and as you mentioned too, Dana White, he's a billionaire. And billionaires often get what they want because everybody has a price tag. There are people who would do something that they don't agree with doing. If the money's big enough, they'll do it. I mean, I talked about knowing preachers and pimps. They're all asking for money. It's the same thing. Everybody has a price. But with Cormier and in his fight, he'll probably win that fight too. But I think you're right. There's something about how do you get health care? If you have brain damage, how are you going to get your long-term care? And I know Dana White's rich, but they don't really address that. You got $1 billion. You could pay a high enough premium that fighters could buy into and get group insurance because somebody would take them on, Big C. But I know it's ironic that the fight is in California as opposed to Vegas, the fight capital of the world. And so we'll see what happens with that. I do want to just bring up something also outside of this fight business. And I know when we look at the world of golf, and golf is still Tiger Woods' game, even though he's not the Tiger Woods of old, or of young, if I should make that statement. Tiger Woods' his odds are 50-1, the longest odds given to win a tournament this season. And Las Vegas Caesars Sports Book has that odds set at 50-1. Other notables, you look at Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka, Jim Furyk, Roy Sabatini, Francisco Molinari, and the great Phil Mickelson. But when I look at today, I know Tiger Woods still brings the needle. He still does. But I've said this before, and I think you've agreed with me. If you're not hungry, like Nate Diaz laying out of MMA fighting for 3 years, if you're not hungry, you're showing up because you're being paid to show up because it brings TV. I don't know if he has that fight in him anymore, that tiger in his belly to want to win. Big C, your thoughts?
Tiger is a mental romance with the audience. That's what he is. He's not a competitive golfer. He is a mental romance. What he's doing is he's reviving what you knew when you were younger.
Yeah.
When he came onto the scene and made everybody feel good. It's like that first date that you had and that first kiss that you got. You always can remember it and reminisce about it.
Yes.
Everybody can remember when Tiger won his first Masters.
Yeah.
They know when he won his last Masters. But it's all that time in between. Was he competitive? He had too many years off.
Yeah.
When you look at any athlete in any major sport, you can't take 5-6 years off and come back and think that you're going to be that competitive athlete that you once were.
Yeah.
We see basketball players out of the game for a couple of years. They come back. They're not what they once were. Baseball players have set out and tried to rekindle their career. Football, it's almost impossible to sit out of football for 2 to 3 years and come back and say, hey, I can be at that all-pro level once again. And that's what people keep expecting of Tiger. He has showed flashes here and there because he has muscle memory in playing the game, so he shows the flashes.
Yeah.
But Tiger is not competitive like he once was a decade ago because Tiger does not put in the work. It'd be like a mechanic who worked on a carbureted car.
Yeah.
Now that all the cars are fuel injected, he said, wait, what happened in the time that I wasn't working as a mechanic?
Artificial
I can't find the carburetor.
Right.
That's the equation of Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
He can't find the fairways enough. He finds the rough, but he can't find the fairways because the game has changed since Tiger dominated the game. There's too many young athletes out there now that are ultra competitive every week, and he doesn't intimidate any longer.
Yeah, well, he's at Medina in Illinois. The PGA, they need him to finish at least 11th or better to advance in the Tour Championship. Tiger won in 2018, teed off today at Chicago at the BMW Championships, Medina, and he also won in 1999 and 2006 PGA Championship. So Tiger Woods will always be relevant for as long as he shows up for that fee that they're going to pay him for showing up. Right now, the leaderboard is Justin Thomas. He shot -765 overall. And then Jason Korak at -7 at 65. Brandt Snedeker shot -6 at 17. Jim Furyk, he shot a -666. And there's some other great golfers in there too. Tony Finau, -5, shot 67. But when you think about some of the other players, we have to look at this in all of our sports. And you talked about golf, and you talked about whether it's tennis, we talked about that too. But there's got to be another player coming along to make this golf game relevant. They've tried with Spieth. They've tried with Johnson. They've tried with so many other players, McIlroy. But Tiger is the Tom Brady of golf, if that makes any sense. I'm going to turn that around. Tom Brady is the Tiger Woods of the NFL. 15 majors compared to 6 Super Bowls. But golf is going to go a long time in finding the next guy that's going to move the needle. And I want to think it's out there, but I don't see it. Phil Mickelson, he's not going to win anything anymore. Tony Finau's been challenging. Brooks Koepka, people don't like him because his attitude is not that friendly. I think that's why he wins so much, because he's not friendly and trying to do interviews like Tiger was when he wasn't there. Is there another guy on your radar, Big C, that will carry golf when Tiger doesn't have the belly for it anymore, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Tiger's not carrying golf now. The tournaments are still playing even when Tiger doesn't show up. I equate Tiger Woods' career to what I equated Muhammad Ali's career.
Yeah.
When Muhammad Ali was in the latter years of his career, and everybody was saying, where was boxing going to go without Ali?
Right.
Boxing survived, Dalton. Think about it. There were champions that came along that picked up the mantle after Muhammad Ali's career had ended in boxing. Larry Holmes, when he became champion, no one thought about Muhammad Ali, even though he fought Muhammad Ali. Larry Holmes was a champion who went 48-0. at one point.
Wow.
After Larry Holmes, who showed up? Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
The mantle was passed. All of a sudden, boxing was even more exciting than relevant. There's always individuals that came along. When Jack Nicklaus retired, everybody's like, well, who's going to be the next great on the golf tour now? But
Yeah.
Jack is gone.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Tiger popped up and took the mantle.
Yeah.
So we have to look at that in sports. Sports now is forever evolving. There's always the next great player. When Michael Jordan retired from the NBA, did the NBA stop or did
No.
it slow down? No, the game got bigger.
Yeah.
Tiger's the same way. He's just one individual in a span of time that captivated a lot of people.
Yeah. Well,
In 10 years, no one will remember that Tiger was the greatest.
yeah.
You know, just like in tennis, when we talk about Serena Williams, Martina Navratilova was dominant just like Serena Williams is for a decade. She was the most dominant female tennis player in the world.
Yeah.
Everybody hated playing her. Serena Williams did the same thing. But the mantle always passes to the next great one that comes along. We don't know who it is, but it will happen.
Well, I think what could help golf is to have the boxing announcer, Bruce Anthony Buffer, in the ring as the announcer. Now, teeing off from the first tee, Tiger Woods. I mean, I love the way he brings excitement to sports. It would be great to have that as opposed to teeing off on the first is Tiger Woods. So sometimes you just need more noise around it. What we're going to do is take the Big C pause and come back. And I want to ask you something because we talked about so many things in the black community, and I want to make sure that we talk about things that are relevant. And I know there's some talk on Jay-Z. We talk about Carter G. Woodson, and we talk about so many things that are not just sports related. I know there's protest and how people tell African Americans when we talk about social equality, shut up. We just want you to play sports. But there's always a time we got to sit down at the table, and oftentimes when you do, people call you a sellout. We'll take the Big C pause and come right back, and I hope that you'll come back and join us. All right, we are back from the Big C pause on the Big C Sports Show, and I just appreciate, Big C, where we're going with the world of Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports now 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, on the #1 podcast network in the universe, on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. If you have a television set in your home, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. And what I really love is the app called Alexa. Say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You're here. Welcome to the show. After you hear from our sponsors, and then I'll introduce Big C, and he'll do his thing. So there's so much going on in the sports universe that I really love being a part of. I want to get on a topic that I love, and I want to just mention this national hotline number. If you have anybody going through issues, is 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255. If you're a teenager, sometime they text 838-255. That's 838-255, because there's help out there if you need it. I know it's been all over the world. In fact, it's amazing. When you talk about things, they tend to happen relatively shortly. We were saying how people are talking about politics and sports because it does mix. I'm not saying we did it first. I'm just saying it's awfully ironic. When we talk about things, they tend to happen within about 24 to 48 hours. Anthony Scaramucci, former White House press secretary, communications director, talking about sports and politics. So this thing with Jay-Z and being a part of the NFL now, you notice all the sports shows are acting like Big C Sports, promoting politics and athletes, entertainers. I want to get your thoughts on Jay-Z and his meeting with Rock Nation and the NFL. Remember, Jay-Z opposed a lot of musicians going and entertaining at the halftime for the Super Bowl last year, saying that we don't need you, you need us. And maybe he was right. But there's some point in time where if you're going to make change, you got to be in the circle of power. You can't be outside of it. So why does Jay-Z, who hangs out with guys like Warren Buffett and now Roger Goodell, why does he take so much flack from our own community for being inside of that circle of power where change takes to happen? Big C, your thoughts?
Jay-Z is a business mogul. He's a very savvy man, and I applaud him for being able to make this structural deal that he has with the NFL to be an advisor on all the entertainment that they do. Yes, he opposed the entertainment at the Super Bowl because of the issue with Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
And the stance against social injustice in America. I think any prescient person understands that social injustice is always going to exist in America.
Yep.
Because the people who can oppose it will not get out and vote.
Yep.
You can tell people to vote, but until you get off your lazy butt and go to a voting poll, Charlton,
Yeah.
and vote the people out of office that are creating this oppression in America, it's going to be what it is. But in Jay-Z and in Colin Kaepernick's issue, Colin Kaepernick is not the first black quarterback to lose a job because of his skin color, and he won't be the last. Doug Williams didn't get another job in the NFL after beating the hell out of John Elway in the Super Bowl.
5
Joe
touchdowns.
Gilliam never got an opportunity to be on a great team again after leading the Steelers to the playoffs while Perry Bradshaw was hurt. There's been many other African-American quarterbacks, Charlton, that have been slighted by this wonderful, great league.
Yeah.
But in a business perspective, look at where Jay-Z is going, Charlton. He is getting on the inside. That is a tough place to get in the NFL, is get on the inside into the corporate part of the league.
Yeah.
Jay-Z has been a partial owner of the New Jersey Nets in the NBA. Now he is partnering with the NFL, the most powerful sports entity in America.
Yeah.
You think about that, having a black man that can sit at the board table of the most powerful sports entity in America, and to be able to have dialogue, not just with the commissioner, but with the owners.
Yeah.
I mean, we all feel empathetic about what happened to Colin Kaepernick. But think about it, Charlton. The black players in the NFL still went out and played every week. They didn't say, we're not going to play because Colin Kaepernick hasn't been signed. So why is so much vitriol being put on Jay-Z for making a business move, and yet you had all the black players in the NFL, all they had to do was say, we're not going to play. We're going to strike until you sign this player. They chose not to do that.
Yeah, and, you know, we talk about Frederick Douglass as a former slave, gained his freedom, and he had to get inside the circle of power. He helped President Abraham Lincoln craft the Emancipation Proclamation that freed slaves. And I'm sure there were some slaves that say, well, wait a minute. He's in the House now? The same House that won't abolish slavery? It got abolished when he got inside. When a doctor does surgery on anybody who's ever had surgery, they got to go inside of the body to repair what needs to be repaired. They can't do it from the outside, maybe with artificial intelligence pretty soon. There's something in the courts called judicial estoppel, and it means when you deliberately take inconsistent positions under oath. And the court doesn't like that. The NFL supports black athletes until they speak about political and social inequalities. That's an oxymoron. They love you as long as you shut up. I think it's good what Jay-Z and Beyonce are doing. They're two of the most powerful black entertainers in the history of the universe. And he's not an ignorant person. You don't hang out with Warren Buffett and guys like Roger Goodell and have your own empire, become parts of a sports team, ownership, not like the athletes that are playing, part of the ownership. And no matter what his background was, everybody goes through something. I mean, we all have a chance to atone and improve. There's no perfect people on the planet. But what I would love to say to my black brethren, and we're not a monolithic group, is quit criticizing people who get inside. We've gotten inside the White House we talked about it, Frederick Douglass, and also President Barack Obama. There was also another African-American president when America had its original 13 colonies. You can Google it. He was a biracial man, but Barack Obama wasn't the first black president of the United States, yes, but the original 13 colonies, there was a black man also. In order to effect change, I want to get your thoughts. You've been an athlete. You've been a broadcaster, radio and TV. You can't do it from the outside. You only make change from getting inside, but once you do, that crab in a barrel mentality, it never goes away, Big C. Why is that, your thoughts?
In anything that you want to accomplish in life, Charlton, you have to get a seat at the table. That's the bottom line. I mean, until you sit at that corporate board table, Charlton, you can never affect change. It's like being in the cabinet of a presidency.
Yeah.
If you're not sitting at that cabinet table, Charlton, then no one hears your voice.
Yep.
It's a simple analogy. Until you get power, power has a voice.
Yep.
So we can all sit outside and say, hey, we don't like this. We can march up and down a street and have a protest. So, we're not going to patronize this facility any longer. But eventually you got to eat.
Yeah.
You got to buy some clothes.
Yeah.
So eventually you got to go patronize that.
Yeah.
The way to make change is the way that Jay-Z makes change. Power is change.
Yeah.
Without power, you cannot make change. And until you can sit with the powerful, you're just an outsider looking in, playing crabs in the bucket.
There's a book called Future Shock by William Shockley. It came out in the 70s. It talked about information happening too fast and people don't process it. And people got to understand this. Google this. Artificial intelligence, and Van Jones has talked about it, but we talked about it before with Robert Thibault, a book called Automatism. It's going to replace about 30% of the jobs in the next 15 years. Things happen too fast. You can't retrain people because we're stuck in our own ways. We're creatures of habit. But for young African Americans, and I'm talking about us, you don't find programs like Big C Sports. You do it now because more people are copycatting. They do it for 2 or 3 minutes. We do it all the time. But if you don't get into the system of economics and the political system, we spend so much time trying to fit into the religious system where we trust pastors who are always asking for money, as opposed to saying, let's take all of our churches and create a black banking system. They had a black stock market in the 1930s. The government tore it down. But if our black churches got together and became a financial entity, as opposed to let's save your soul, we don't know if you can save somebody's soul, but you do know if you took the 90 million people that are part of churches that are black folks in this country, and there's only 13 million in the country, but we're blended in. But there's about 90 million people that go to church in the United States, all colors. If the black church were to try to create a banking system, you could go to any bank and say, look, we have 13 million people, or even just 1 million, and you could change those economies that I think Jay-Z is trying to do with the help of the NFL. Because we're so focused on religion, we don't focus on the political and the banking system. That's going to lift us up. Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's about creating power. That's what anybody wants. When you look at sports teams, they try to create the most powerful team available.
Yeah.
Whether they're going out free agency or through the draft. It's about creating power. It's about having leverage, looking at dominance. When players are trying to get new contracts, holding out in training camp, it's about having leverage, creating power. This is what it's all about. And until you can go out and create the power in unity, and that's where we have the divisiveness in this country on everything.
Yeah.
No one wants to stay together in one unified force. And when we think about minorities, when you have powerful minorities making moves in the mainstream society, people always say, well, there's got to be an ulterior motive.
A sellout.
Because they spoke against these people at one time. Yes, they did.
Yeah.
But now that these people see that they're a viable product out there, Charlton, because of their knowledge,
yeah,
they're more apt to bring them in. And that's what the NFL has done with Jay-Z.
Yep.
They figured that it was more beneficial to have Jay-Z on their side than not on their side.
Yeah.
So the NFL had to create that dialogue. Jay-Z didn't create it. The NFL had to be open to it.
Yep.
They have to want him in their fold, Charlton. That's how it is. You think about players. Training camp is going on. There's got to be a lot of players that are cut.
Yeah.
That hope to have a job in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's about the team wanting to have them in their fold, Charlton. They make the decision on who is going to be and who is not going to be on the roster. The NFL made a conscientious decision to say we need to be in some type of partnership with Jay-Z and Rock Nation.
Yeah.
This is what we do. It's advantageous for us because the reach will go well beyond the game, Charlton. The one individual that everybody wanted to see back in the game, he's not going to come back into the game anytime soon. It would be great to see him have an opportunity to compete, and if he got cut,
yeah,
everyone would accept that. It would stop all the dialogue about that. But
yeah,
Jay-Z and his corporation made a corporate decision. Anybody who the NFL wants to partner with, Charlton, is huge.
Yeah.
And everybody grows expeditiously.
And Jay-Z, again, the NFL is expected to be a $27 billion entity in the next 10 years. It's only about $14 billion right now. If you want to be able to affect change, like Frederick Douglass, you got to be in the circle of power. So I just encourage every African-American and white people, too, that are saying that Jay-Z's a sellout, and I've heard too many people say that, just take the time to Google Carter G. Woodson and read the book, if you can, The Miseducation of the Negro. We have spent so much time focused on spirituality and not economics, and that's hurt us. there's enough black churches that if they got into banking, and they may not because they don't want to lose their status of 501c3, but that could change a lot of people's financial situation. I just applaud what Jay-Z is doing, and I hope that more people do it. I also want to bring up something, too, because the NFL, it employs mostly men of color. About 70% of the athletes African-American. Coaching's not the same. But if you can tell me in any industry where change has been affected without having a seat at the table, I haven't found that spot, Big C. And I want to talk about this thing that's happened with the NFL and the games that are being played tonight. We look at John Gruden. He signed a $100 million contract for over 10 years with the Raiders, and now they're playing in Arizona tonight. You have Kyler Murray, who's the first draft pick in the NFL for this season. So I want to get your thoughts. Who will have a better first quarter? Because Murray may just play the first quarter. Will it be the Oakland Raiders quarterback and Derek Carr, who's a $125 million man, versus Kyler Murray, who many people to this day were still saying he should have played defensive back, he should have played wide receiver. We don't want him at quarterback. But I think if he can outshine Derek Carr, what would that say about the NFL pundits that were saying this black guy didn't have the talent or the height or the skill? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think the adjustment to the NFL is going to be a task for Kyler Murray, Charlton. I like Derek Carr's position in his game. He's been under NFL fire for several seasons now.
Yeah.
And he cannot go out and be outshined by a rookie quarterback, Charlton, at this stage of his career. I think he would have an advantage over Murray because he understands what NFL defenses look like.
Yeah.
You got to look from the Arizona perspective. You have a rookie head coach. You have a rookie quarterback. You have an entirely new system that you're not trying to just get the quarterback to adjust to, but you're trying to get all the offensive personnel to adjust to, Charlton.
Yeah.
So I give advantage to the Oakland Raiders. You got a second-year coach in John Gruden who has NFL experience. You got a quarterback that was once an all-pro in Derek Carr.
Yeah.
They know what they're trying to accomplish. They have some veteran players on their roster that understand what they're doing. It's going to be a learning curve in Phoenix this year. They still, I feel, have the fourth best team in their division.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to all of a sudden walk into the NFL with a new head coach, with a new quarterback, and several new players and say we're going to be the best. We're going to beat Kansas City. We're going to beat Denver.
Yeah.
And we're going to beat Oakland in our division, Charlton.
Yeah. I just want to wish both of these men well because I want to see young men succeed. And I still think Carr, I don't know if John Gruden believes in him. I mean, that's just my opinion from watching things over the years, but I want to see Murray do well. I want to see both men do well. But here's a quarterback guru on the sideline. Can he put together a scheme that will slow down Murray? There's also a couple of games tonight in NFL preseason. Again, it's preseason. I want to get your thoughts on the Green Bay Packers at Baltimore. Green Bay has a new system, new coach. They still have the same Aaron Rodgers. And what's going to happen against Jackson? Remember, Lamar Jackson was told, just like Murray's told, maybe he should play defense. Maybe he would do better in the NFL as a wide receiver. But he replaced Joe Flacco last year. I think he went 7-1 regular season, got him into the playoffs, and they just ran into a hot team in the playoffs. And Aaron Rodgers did not get Green Bay in the playoffs the last 2 years. So here's an African-American quarterback in Jackson that many pundits did not want this Heisman Trophy winner to be a quarterback in the NFL. But now he's going to play tonight. And again, it's preseason. But who has the most pressure? Would it be Rodgers or Jackson or the new coach for Green Bay? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think the pressure's on Jackson. You got to realize when he ran into that hot team in the playoffs last year, that was the second time he saw that team last year, Charlton. They had tape on it. They knew what his limitations were.
Yeah.
Jackson has to expand his repertoire as a quarterback. He has to become more efficient in passing the football, Charlton. That was his Achilles heel. They also have to incorporate a new running back in Ingram that they picked up in free agency from New Orleans.
Yeah.
So there's going to be wholesale changes in Baltimore with that offense. I think in Green Bay with LaFleur as the head coach, Aaron Rodgers is still going to be the guy.
Yeah.
Regardless of having LaFleur as a head coach, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers to play as long as he wants in the game tonight and to run the plays that he wants. You know, he has a veteran core around him on the offensive line. He has Adams at receiver.
Yeah.
So he has guys that he's familiar with. Jackson is trying to get settled as a full-time quarterback, Charlton. That's what he's trying to do. He needs to learn how to stay in the pocket and work that intermediate game.
Yeah.
All of that is already a part of Aaron Rodgers' repertoire.
Well, I look forward. It's just the feeling of football is back. People get a little bit more intense, and I love the game. You gotta fight for what you want. The New York Jets and Sam Darnold down in Atlanta against Matt Ryan, $155 million Matt Ryan. And I know Darnold had a decent game first week, but again, it's preseason. But here's a year for the Jets quarterback, at least in the first quarter, to come out and shine. But we know Ryan had a pretty decent season last year. The Falcons just need a better defense. But one guy's been to the Super Bowl, and Ryan, even though they lost a 28-3 lead against the Patriots. How do you feel about Darnold after he's been in the NFL for 1 year? He still threw a lot of picks in year one. He has to improve in year two for the Jets to even finish 500. Give me your thoughts.
Well, last year he was the youngest starting quarterback in the history of the NFL, Charlton. He made some strides. The last 3 games that he played last year were probably the best 3 games of his NFL career. But the Jets need help on defense. They don't have any cornerbacks. And if the Falcons were to play their complement of receivers tonight, it would be a blowout game. They got to figure out, can they get a pass rush? They got a lot of guys in free agency. They also had Quentin Williams in the first round to go along with Leonard Williams. They have potentially 2 tremendous defensive tackles with the New York Jets. They picked up C.J. Mobley at linebacker. But Aaron Donald, Sam Darnold, the quarterback with the Jets, he has to make some strides. I don't know how much time Le'Veon Bell is going to get, even if he plays tonight. For Atlanta, Julio Jones and the major part of the receiving core won't even play, probably not even Devontae Freeman, their top running back.
Yeah.
So this is a game that I don't know if Atlanta puts much emphasis on it. They've lost their last 10 consecutive preseason games. So they haven't really worried about winning preseason games. They're trying to keep bodies healthy and see what they have for roster spots.
Cincinnati at Washington. I know Haskins had 50 touchdowns at Ohio State. Didn't get off to the best start in week 1, but I think he'll probably play better. Again, it's preseason. Any pressure on him, and then Cincinnati's still trying to figure out what they're going to do. But Washington, they got to get settled. I know people say start Haskins in week 1. I would love to see him sit on the sideline for a couple of weeks. 3 or 4 weeks wouldn't hurt the man. They want to have him around 10 years and let him see things that he can realize, okay, I saw this on the sideline. I think that would help him. I want to get your thoughts if you think that's too cautious, your thoughts.
Well, part of the maturation process for him tonight will be sitting on the bench. Case Keenum is going to get the start in Washington. They acquired him in a trade from the Denver Broncos. Case Keenum has been a surefire workman quarterback. 2 years ago, he had the Vikings, 1 play away from making the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
So when you think about where he is as a quarterback in development, I think it's best for Dwayne Haskins to sit back and see the game develop in front of his eyes from the sideline.
Yeah.
So all the pressure will be off of him tonight. You're going to get a lot of Case Keenum and Colt McCoy and maybe get him in the next preseason game.
I think the biggest game tonight, Big C, you have the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're playing Jacksonville. The NFL preseason is amazing, comparing Carson Wentz to Nick Foles, and who has better numbers, the guy playing in Jacksonville. Think about what they've done last 2 seasons, including playoffs. Carson Wentz has been 16 wins, 8 losses. Nick Foles has been 10 wins and 3 losses. The winning percentage for Carson Wentz, he wins 67% of his games. Nick Foles, he's won 77% of his games. And when you think about that, the guy with the better numbers, he was shipped off. Because about the sports world, it's based on contracts, not based on who took you to a Super Bowl championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I look at Nick Foles' situation in Jacksonville. How healthy is his receiving core going to be down there with him? We know they have Leonard Fournette in the backfield. They have a solid all-pro running back. The defense has been outstanding the past couple of years down in Jacksonville. They needed some offensive firepower at quarterback. Blake Bortles just could not get the job done, so they went out and signed Nick Foles in free agency.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. You got Zach Ertz, one of the best tight ends in the game. Alshon Jeffrey's been consistent. They went out and brought in Mark Jackson. They brought him back as a wide receiver in Philadelphia. So they upgraded the receiving core. They also got this rookie out of Stanford, and he was really going to help.
Yep.
So if they could be healthy in Philadelphia, and the big question is healthy even for the quarterback, Carson Wentz, Can they keep him healthy? That's going to be the key to the season. When he's healthy, he's a top-flight NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
We know that Nick Foles has a Super Bowl ring as a starting quarterback. Everybody keeps telling you Carson Wentz has a Super Bowl ring. He does, as well as the rest of the backups on that team got one. But can he be the guy to stay healthy at the end of the season to get the Eagles into the playoffs?
That's a very good point, Big C. I want to get your thoughts on something, too. Andrew Luck, again, uncertain for Week 1 at the Chargers, has a calf and an ankle issue, and the coach GM, Chris Ballard, says that it's become a high ankle issue. We remember he talked about ankle issues and calf issues in the NBA with Durant and other players in the NBA. We know that Luck is very talented, but he's also guaranteed to have some type of injury prone. Do you worry about that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's starting to become an issue with Andrew Luck. Can he stay healthy? We've seen this with a lot of top-flight quarterbacks throughout their career. Can they stay healthy? And that's starting to become an issue with him. They've done all they can to protect him. They built up a tremendous offensive line last year. We remember the shoulder injury from 3 years ago where he sat out an entire season and a half, Charlton, because he couldn't throw the football.
Yeah.
He came back to all-pro status last year, but now when you're dealing with a lower extremity, especially on a football player, a quarterback, who needs to stride into the football when he's throwing it. This could be a problem for Andrew Luck. And, we saw what happened with Kevin Durant when they talked about it was an ankle injury. I knew from the start that it was an Achilles injury.
Yeah.
And this is what they're suspecting with Andrew Luck right now. They're going to say ankle, but it's really his Achilles that is affecting him right now. And do they want to push him on that? Because I remember years ago when Dan Marino blew out his Achilles tendon.
That's right.
He was never the same quarterback.
Yeah, and we know sometimes they want to watch North Dallas forward and you see what happens about athletes. And I couldn't feel bad for a guy who has a dream lifestyle, but DeMarcus Cousins, another injury. You think about what's happened with him in 2015, strained right Achilles, a sore back in 2016, left ankle sprain, 2017, sprained his right ankle. In 17, also sore Achilles tendon. In 2018, torn Achilles tendon. 2019, torn left quadricep. And now he has a knee injury just running. Is he now damaged goods officially, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it's official that he has a torn ACL. So most likely he's going to be out for this upcoming season also, Charlton. When you got a big man that starts to suffer multiple leg injuries, Charlton, you really got to be concerned how much left in his career. With the up and down pace of the NBA and pounding on that hardwood every night, you've torn your Achilles, you had the torn quad, Charlton, and now you got the torn ACL, and all three of those injuries are on the same leg.
Yeah, well...
So that leg is really going to be interesting as far as what team is willing to take a chance. He only had a one-year deal with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
Who is going to be willing to go out on a limb and sign him to any type of contract, Charlton, when next season comes around?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and I wish him nothing but the best, but he did a lot of good things for communities in Northern California, but it's all fair and love and war, and injuries are definitely a part of the game. I want to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow us on YouTube. If you have a television set in your home, and most people do, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. I really love the app by Alexa. If you say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. So I really appreciate the growth that we're having with Big C Sports. I want to close out tonight's show with just some talk about Major League Baseball schedule. I know a lot of things are happening as we run through the month of August. We're already halfway through August. Tonight's schedule, Cleveland at New York. And that game is, you'd be surprised at how Cleveland is really turning things around. I'm telling you, there's something about the C on their uniform. And I don't like to give out scores because I want people to get home and watch what they want. But there's something about the big C on their uniform that gives them a chance to beat anybody. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Cleveland and Francona is gotten in the swing of things. They made a big trade right prior to the trade deadline when they picked up Yasiel Puig from the Cincinnati Reds, so he didn't have to move far in the state of Ohio just from Cincinnati to Cleveland. But, this team has gotten hot as of late, Charlton, and, they're getting back in that wild card hunt.
Yep, they really are getting into the hunt. Also, another team with the big C on the head is Chicago at Philadelphia, St. Louis at Cincinnati, New York Mets at Atlanta, Minnesota Twins at Texas. You have San Francisco at Arizona, Chicago's at Los Angeles, Houston's at Oakland, and some makeup games. We have Seattle at Detroit, and L.A. Dodgers at Miami. Be surprised over who wins games. It's not always a team with the best record. It's just a matter of who gets hot at the right time. But I know baseball is amazing. It's an amazing sport, Big C, and everybody has their own opinions about who the hotter teams are. But I was asking you just the other day about Cleveland. And if Cleveland can come on strong the way we know they can, I'm not so sure that they won't find themselves in the championship series, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it is about getting hot, but there's a couple other teams in the AL that I really like. I really like the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah.
Because the way they can hit the long ball this year, Charlton. We know that the New York Yankees has dominated the East. The Houston Astros are a very tough foe. But don't even count out the Rays down in Tampa, Charlton. I mean, there's a lot of formidable opponents in the American League.
Yeah, it's all true in love and war. And I just want to say as we close out, we've talked about who are the better athletes. Is it the rugby football players or the guys that play with helmets? Is really hockey? Is that hockey athlete tougher than the NFL player? Is mixed martial arts tougher than boxing? It's all fair in love and war. I would love to have people talk to their parents and grandparents and just mix those two generations together and see what they thought. I also appreciate what Jay-Z is doing, because you can only affect change when you're inside the circle of power. It's like someone inviting you into their home. You can stand outside and protest, but if it's cold, you're not going to get warm unless they let you in. It's the same thing in life. Everybody, I just encourage people, if you're African American and you're calling Jay-Z a sellout, he's not a sellout. He's a sell-in. He's an intellectual person. We talked about being intellectual versus instinctive. We got to get out of this mentality of, if you want to affect change, stay on the outside of power. You can only affect change by being on the inside of power. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this sports universe?
Well, Charlton, we got these NFL preseason games going on tonight, but tonight we're officially 1 week away from the kickoff of the college football season down in Orlando, with the University of Florida and the University of Miami opening up the 150th season of college football in America.
I love it, Big C. There's something about the smell of football and old jock straps that I love to go back to the days of high school. You can love it too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.